Hey, welcome back, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. I want to apologize if I look a little rough this morning. It was another long night. I got to bed just before 3, and the phone started ringing just before 7, so it was kind of short. And I've been on the phone ever since, as you can imagine. Why? Because UT Martin, for the first time, has opened up the file on Buford Pusser. And of course, some of those that got out there and were on the list early to look at the file have told who the individual was that had the M1 carbine that was possibly used in the ambush in which Pauline Pusser was killed. Of course, TBI is determined, along with District Attorney General Mark Davidson, that about the only ambush that took place was Buford killing Pauline. The story behind the M1 and how I became involved is kind of what everyone is interested in because they don't know the backstory, and I'm not prepared to tell the entire backstory today because I'm going to keep some of it for my book. But what I will tell you is that, yes, the person that had the gun was Ricky Plunjk, Peaty Plunk's son. And as you know, Peaty Plunjk was one of Buford's deputies. Ricky called me back in May. I had to go look it up because it's been a while. And he told me he thought he had the gun that might have been used to kill Pauline. And I thought, oh my gosh, here we go again. I've heard this story a dozen different times, a dozen different ways, and it's never panned out, but I listened. And the more he told me, the more it made sense that it could possibly be the gun. So I went over and checked it out. And as somebody has noted, I drove 465 miles just to do that. Of course, neither one of us knew if it was the gun or not. We didn't know much about it. I certainly didn't. As a matter of fact, I didn't know if somebody was trying to set me up because I've had threats about all this before. So before I left, I notified local law enforcement that if I didn't come back, this was where I was headed. Well, when I got over there, pulled up to Ricky's place, and I realized that this was going to be fine. Met Ricky, met his young bride, and he started to tell me the story. And the more he told me, the more it made sense. But like myself, he had as many questions about all this as I did. So we took it out, and I got serial number, everything I could off the gun, just for the record. I just wanted to have that just in case something came up. There would be a written record of it. We took it out and we shot it a few times. And I wanted to keep the casings and some projectiles from it. Of course, here again, still didn't know if it was the gun that was involved. And Ricky would tell me that his father gave that to him when he was a lot younger, put it that way. And through the years, as he learned more and more about all this from the internet, he got to wondering if the gun might be the same gun that was used to kill Pauline. And he wanted to know. And he said he'd been following my page for a long time, but he had never so much as made a comment. And at that point, he decided that I was really into this to find out who murdered Pauline. So he gave me a call. That's kind of the story about that. I contacted the TBI. They contacted Ricky, spoke with him by phone, and then sent a couple of agents out to pick the gun up. A little bit later, I heard, and this was in late May, I heard back from one of the TBI agents that was on the case. And he's asked me about the gun, what I knew, and if I had other information. And I told him that, yeah, I had a number of things that would probably be interesting. And so it was in, like I say, late May, early June by now. And we made it a point for me to meet with him in Selmer. So I did. And there's a whole story here about what happened after that. I'm not prepared to go into it just yet because, like I say, one thing you need to know about why I'm so reluctant to say too much is because nobody else knows what I went through, or at least they shouldn't, to accomplish all this. And I've always said after I wrote that first book that I'd do a follow-up book. And so I want some of the details to come out in that. And right now you have other books coming out, and there's going to be even more books when the people get a chance to go through the file there at UT Martin. And they're going to want to write about this. And this time, everybody will have the facts pretty straight, I imagine. It won't be a lot of guessing games like it's been before. But the thing is, they won't know the entire story about how all this came about. They'll just know what they read in the files. And so my book should be different than anyone else's. I haven't talked to but one person that I can think of that others have visited with about this. And of course, a lot of people know Dennis Hathcock. I've known him for basically 20 years now, maybe a little longer. And he was contacted by one of these individuals, but he didn't tell him everything. This individual is another author. So I just want to keep a few of these details to myself, and but I will tell the entire story one of these days. But just so that everyone knows, Deputy Peaty Plunjk was one of Buford's trusted deputies. And it's even like his wife, LaVon, told me when I interviewed her. She was afraid that when she was there earlier that night of the ambush there at the Pusser residence, that she heard a gunshot. And she knew she couldn't call the sheriff's office because Carl Pusser would have been the one to answer the phone. At the same time, she was afraid to call Peaty because she was afraid that he might try and cover for Buford, and if something had happened, because she didn't know exactly what had happened at that time. So she couldn't call him, and that's when she went home. She was trying to decide what to do, and then Peaty called her sometimes later and said, well, Pauline's been killed in an ambush meant for Buford. And there are stories out there that Buford was taken to Selmer, which is true. There's a lot of confusion here about what happened at Alan McCoy's store. That's where Buford and Pauline were found. Now, Buford, in his statement, says that they put Pauline in the ambulance with him when they went to Selmer. And that means that the crime scene would have been, and the crime scene being the car there at Alan McCoy's, that means with her body having been removed and all this, that the crime scene would have been altered. Now, I don't know if he insisted that they put her in there and take her with him or what, but that's in his statement that's out there now. Don't know why he said it. Don't know what his intention was, but it's there. But yet, Bill Wade told me before he passed away that he took the photographs of Pauline there in the seat and about how devastating her head wound was. And of course, the TBI determined that she was shot with a 30 caliber weapon, which could include several different firearms, 30-06, you know, basically the same thing as a 30 caliber round. So, and it was odd that he made the statement in his TBI statement that he went to the trunk during the ambush to get his 30-06, a high-powered rifle, and he remembered that he had loaned it to Charles Cox. And I don't know for a fact, but I've heard stories that some of the shell casings that were there at the ambush scene were necked like a 30-06 round would be, rather than a straight shell casing like a 30 caliber carbine round would be. So I don't have all the details, never have. You have to remember, when I started doing this, I had nothing to work with as far as resources like I did back when I was in law enforcement, and that's been years ago. All I had to work with were things like newspaper clippings, magazine articles, and any personal interviews that I could get with people who were involved, people who were there, people who lived it every day. And so that's the way I kind of put this whole thing together. Well, like I say, I did meet with the TBI. I did give them some materials. Some of it I later sent over through email. That included some recordings, photographs, I believe, and introduced them to some people that had never been given the opportunity to make a statement to the TBI. And there was other things, but I'm not going to go into that right now. But I will tell you, they are a very tight-lipped bunch. Of course, I would listen. I'd try to dig for details. I'd ask questions, and basically got nothing out of them. So even though I was trying to help out, I was still putting things together. It's like last night, or I guess I should say Thursday, when I put out the video about Tim Valentine and his car. That was another thing. And why did I go ahead and put that out? Well, you know, a lot of people are out there and they're putting their own spin on the story. Got one fellow out there that says that he did his investigation. Well, his is identical to mine. And, but he hasn't been at it nearly as long. And like I said, hasn't contacted all the people I did, hasn't interviewed the people I did. By the time that he got started, some of them were already gone. So, but the thing is, there's a lot of people out there that are going to say that they did the same thing, and they're going to imply that they did a lot of the work that I did by calling it their own investigation. Well, a lot of their investigation probably came from my work. So, at any rate, I put Tim out there because that was another person that I spoke with, that I interviewed, that I passed his information along to the TBI. And there's no way that other people would, I think, would know the identity of this individual. And, of course, you heard in his own words what happened with his communication with them. It was through contractors who specialize in using a 3D laser scanner, and what they did to measure the car. And like you said, they didn't tell him much because they didn't know much either. As I said, TBI is pretty good at keeping secrets. And of course, that's because it's in their protocols and I guess a statute there at the state that they cannot share information with anyone without a court order or without it being a proper authority. So now you know that part of the story. I've been just as curious as anybody else what all is in that file. There's probably a lot of things I don't know, and I know a lot, but I'd like to see how correct my own work is and matching up with theirs. I'm sure that there's people that they interviewed that I didn't have a clue about. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that have passed on that they weren't able to interview. And that's the reason that some of the recordings that I'd made during interviews became of some value to them. But there you have it. There's a story of the gun. It came from Peaty Plunjk, passed down to his son. His son, after he got a little older and heard more about the ambush, wanted to know if that gun was possibly used. And that's when he got in touch with me. And in turn, we got in touch with the TBI. And there's nothing malicious on our part about examining the gun, logging down the information, shooting the gun, because, hey, I had absolutely no idea if it could be the gun or not. And like I said, I'd heard the story a dozen different times, told a dozen different ways. So this was just one more story until it began to fall into place. And, you don't normally contact an agency like the TBI and say, well, I think I may have this, because they're going to ask you, well, why do you think that? So you want to have a little information on it, or at least I do. So that's the story there. I will say that there's a lot of people out there that just in the last few days have been putting videos out and making claims about it was this person, it was that person who had the gun. One of them was saying that this person had a felony conviction, and they were all wrong. The names that they put out there as being the person who had the gun, they got it wrong. The one that said that the individual had a felony conviction does not. So all I'm trying to say is, folks, you got to be careful about who you listen to out here. I try to make it clear when I'm expressing an opinion, and I'm not expressing it as fact, because there's people involved, real people that live over there that have to face their friends, their neighbors, their family. And the story about Buford Pusser goes several ways. Within the same family, some people could have loved the guy and other people hated the guy. And to me, I never met Buford, didn't know anything about him, started researching him, and I kind of got caught up in the ambush plot, and because it didn't make sense. And when it didn't make sense, there were a lot of other things that didn't make sense. I've said it many times that when I saw the autopsy report for Louis Hathcock, it didn't make his story about the shooting didn't make sense. Just like when I saw the photos of the car when it was ambushed, the blood all over the interior, the exterior, didn't make sense. The bullet holes in the car didn't make a lot of sense. And then we find out in his statement that while he was telling the media one thing, he was telling authorities and investigators something entirely different. So obviously, I think he was trying to control the narrative. And eventually that has kind of backfired on him. But when you go through the entire file, I think most people that are reasonable with their thinking process are going to look at it and say, yep, Buford probably did it. And when I say probably, the man is never going to stand trial. He's gone. There's no way to take him to trial. And a lot of people say, well, he wasn't convicted. Well, no, he wasn't. But he hadn't cleared himself either before he passed away in that accident. And, and that's another conspiracy thing altogether. All these people saying, oh, the state liners finally got it. Nothing to that. They're just repeating rumors. So with all this being said, I will say that, hey, if you're going to the tour on the 25th of this month, please send me an email or a message on Messenger there on Facebook. I'd like to know how many's in your party. Basically, where you're driving from, just trying to keep track of how far the interest goes out. But your name, your location, and the number of people in your party so we'll know how to plan. I like to provide some refreshments for everybody before we get started and some along the way. I need to know how much to purchase. We need to know how many people are there just in order to kind of be able to control the crowd as we go through all these sites. The last couple of times, the line has been pretty long, so hopefully we're going to do better by having a much larger bus this time. And again, it's free. It's not like some of these knuckleheads have said that I do bus tours. First of all, I don't do a bus tour. We do a caravan tour. We don't charge for it. It's always been free. The only thing that might cost you is if you decide to go inside the museum when we arrive there, because they do get an admission fee. I don't get any of it. Don't expect to. But the museum's an interesting place. If you haven't been there before, I would encourage you to go inside. But at any rate, I'm trying to determine how many people are going to be there. And for you people who have been in law enforcement, if it was a full career, if it was a partial career, if you're retired, doesn't matter. We're going to have a day for law enforcement officers on the 24th. That's Friday. And you're welcome to come to it. For that one, we will meet at the courthouse at 9 a.m. on that Friday morning. And we'll go through basically the same sites as we do on the tour that's open to the public. The one that is open to the public, we're going to meet at the Ag Center, Ag Event Center there in Selmer, out at the old fairgrounds. And we'll get together, have coffee, soft drinks, water, donuts, whatever, and take some time to kind of get acquainted, get to know each other. There's a lot of people I've met on the phone or on Facebook, but I've never seen them before. Don't know who they are. So that gives us a chance to introduce ourselves to each other and kind of get to know each other before we go through all this. We'll go to the first site, which will be where Buford was killed in that car wreck. Then we'll go to the cemetery there in Adamsville, where the family plot is, so everybody that wishes can pay their respects to the Pusser family. Then we'll go on to the museum and take some time to let everybody that wants to go through it do so. From there, we'll take the route that Buford is said to have taken the morning of the ambush. And it's not like it was back then. The roads are much improved over what they were back in those days, because he said he was driving down through those old country roads sometimes at 80 and 90 miles an hour. And so I want everybody to see that route. And if you're like me, you'll be wondering why on earth he went that way. We've got some new things to add to the tour as far as information goes, because like I said before, I didn't have access to his statement. And now we know that what he told the media was different than what he told law enforcement. So as we get to each of the sites, after we arrive at the church there on New Hope Road, we'll start filling you in about some of the things that are in Buford's statement and how they differ from what he told the press. After we leave the church, we'll go down to the ambush site, the first one, and the church and it are excellent photo ops, as is his crash site. People will be able to get some photos there. Dennis Hathcock will be along. He'll tell about what he saw that morning when he arrived, and R.C. Matlock, a constable, was there at the bridge. After we've covered that, we'll go on down to the second ambush site. And once again, he'll tell about what he saw there that morning, and how he went back to the first ambush site to let everybody know that, hey, it looks like it happened down here because there's part of her scalp, hair, shell casings all over the place, glass, and how that kind of diverted things to that point. After that, we'll drive another mile, stop at the state line, and there's not much left there. I've got to warn you, but you'll see how the restaurant, Shamrock Restaurant, and the Plantation Club sat on the Mississippi side of the state line, and how the Shamrock Motel and the White Iris sat on the Tennessee side. And what's so important about that is when you think about it, you look at a motel and you look at that small facility just in easy walking distance from the Shamrock where the White Iris was, and that's what Buford called the state line. And you got to wonder how much business they could do at the motel and at that one site down there to say he had something major to clean up, because the restaurant and the Plantation Club were not in his jurisdiction. So it'll make you think about that. When we leave there, we will head on up 45 north, and we'll come to the site where Sheriff Dickey was killed. We won't be able to stop there. There's no place for safe parking, and certainly no way for people to get out and take a look at all this. So we'll try to do a slow drive-by. We'll have an FM transmitter in the lead vehicle, and we'll be telling about where these sites are and what is happened at each. After we pass by Dickey's, almost immediately is where Hollis Jordan's tavern sat. And there's nothing there any longer, but at least you'll know where the location was. From there, time permitting, we might drive by the Old Hickory Grill, and also Willie B's. Willie B's is still standing, even though the Old Hickory Grill is not. And sometimes we like to cruise past Pearl's place. And as you know, Pearl was one of his girlfriends. We end up in Eastview, and we'll do another slow drive-by at Alan McCoy's store, where Buford and Pauline were found that morning. Again, it's kind of hazardous through there because of traffic, because you're trying to get back on 45, so we'll do a slow drive-by, but give everybody a chance to actually see where it was. Depending on circumstances, we may stop at Love's Travel Center, because people often report that nature has rang its bell and needs to be taken care of. So we often stop by there, but right in that location is also where the state maintenance lot was that Dennis and Johnny watched the gun exchange the night of the ambush. Once we've covered all that, we'll head on into Selmer, go up to the courthouse, see the little museum that they've got set up in the basement, all about, McNairy County and Buford. And from that point, also Buford's office is down there. At least one that they have set up is his office. And I'm sure most of you already know that that's not where his office was. I'll point out where his office actually was. We'll go upstairs and take a look at the jail. And it'll give you a chance to see what a 1960s era jail looked like, and how it was often overcrowded. You'll get a chance to have your photo taken behind bars, and some of you, as I've said in the past, we may just leave there. Maybe. We'll go on up to the courtroom, have a question and answer session for anybody who wants to stick around for that. And then we'll take a break. And then a little later, that gives everybody a chance to freshen up if they'd like to go out to dinner. And we usually pick out some restaurant that will hold the crowd, try to reserve space, which is another reason I need to know about how many people are coming. And then we all go out to dinner that evening for everybody that would like. I would like to point out that it's Dutch. I'm not a rich man, regardless of all the millions some of these naysayers say that I've made off of selling this book. I'm not a rich man, so I will not be buying dinner that night. You're on your own for that one. And speaking of such, you need to bring something to drink while we're on this route because it takes quite a while to get through it. And a lot of people like to bring a sack lunch, something that they can have while we're going between sites. So there you have it, folks. But again, I'll just close out by saying the person who had the gun was Ricky Plunjk. He did his own checking, found out that it was not reported as stolen, even though, O'Neill Moffett said, yeah, he took some of them from the Air Force. And there were more, there were other guns that were taken, but some M1s were among those. And its significance is that it was an M1 that was used to murder Pauline. So I'm tired. Haven't had much sleep all week, so I'm going to get off here and see if I can get a little shut-eye, and I might even shave, take a shower. It's been that kind of a week. So, folks, until next time, just remember, as I always say, truth has no agenda. Thanks for watching, and we finally got justice for Pauline.